All right, guys, welcome back to the Canadian Real Estate Homefront podcast. Obviously, there's a lot going on in the world right now. We're not going to talk about Trump's presidency.
Please no.
But if we do talk about something later on, maybe we'll talk about Trump's policy affecting Canadians. We don't vote in America. We're both not American citizens. So there's no point in getting into it. We're just going to talk about what's going on in Canada right now, what we're seeing, and what we could see going forward. So, Brooke, how you feeling?
A lot is going on. It's funny because last time Trump was elected, I was in the States and people just didn't even watch what was going on. No one was talking about it. But Canada and Canadians like to talk about it almost more than Americans like to talk about it. So I feel like right now it is what everyone is talking about and what the conversations, especially on Instagram, are about.
Yeah.
So you can tell that things are kind of a little bit heated, really torn. People are wondering how it's going to affect our economy. So even though we said we weren't going to talk about it, that's been my morning.
That's been your morning. I get it. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
I think there's people on either side of the issue, and it's fair. There's not much center going on, so it is what it is.
Yeah, I'm busy today though. We have an offer on our listing out in Niagara. 2 offers accepted yesterday. You just did a massive one.
Yeah.
So things are definitely picking up, even just showing activity. So we always say that when the rates decrease, it takes a little while to kind of settle into the market.
Mhm.
Things go slow a little bit before these announcements, and then it kind of settles in. So I do notice increased activity. That doesn't necessarily mean prices are going to go up right away. They're definitely not going to skyrocket, just to let people know that's not where I think things are going to go. But activity is increasing. More people are talking about real estate. More people are just even clicking on listings. Like the listing view count is up, right? So things are busier.
Well, that kind of leads into is the third topic of the day, but let's jump into the first topic. So rate cuts are taking hold in the GTA. Home sales have jumped 44% since 2023. Yeah. So new sales data shows Toronto's housing market is finally starting to wake up just in time for winter. According to TREB, October home sales in the GTA increased on both a monthly and yearly basis, while new listings ticked up at a lower rate than last year. So we're seeing less listings come to the market. While we are still in the early days of the Bank of Canada's rate cutting cycle, it definitely does appear that an increasing number of buyers moved off the sidelines and back into the marketplace in October, says TREB's president. The positive affordability picture brought about by lower borrowing costs and relatively flat home prices prompted this improvement in the market activity. So this is pretty important to note in my opinion. So in October, TREB reported 6,600 home sales. That's up 44% compared to October of 2023. There was about 4,900 sales in September.
So this is on TREB alone.
This is TREB alone, yeah.
So this is the Toronto real estate market. Most agents are a part of this, meaning most
it's about 70,000 agents, yeah.
However, there's a lot of listings that I find in Hamilton, in my areas, Oakville, that are not on the Toronto board. Me being an agent that works kind of broadly in the GTA, I always make sure my listings are on both the Toronto board, which would be included in those stats, and the other boards. But there are multiple boards that 6,600 would be the low number on what October sales actually were if you look at the entire GTA, because not every single listing is on TREB. Yeah,
there's multiple boards. So yeah, that's a good point. Also, I follow this realtor in Vancouver, and he said there's been an uptick in sales. Again, uptick in sales does not mean an uptick in prices. But it does mean that more people are coming back to the market. I looked at the bond yield this morning. It popped up even higher. It's about It's about 3.1%. Again, we're up more than 40 basis points since the Bank of Canada started cutting.
They think that there's not going to be another cut then, it seems like.
So we're basically going off the premise that with Trump getting in and the economic data in the States looking pretty positive, they don't need to aggressively cut.
Right.
Canada has pretty aggressively cut rates. With that being said, they have to tread very lightly because the dollar's at 71 cents. It's down quite significantly. So yeah, over time, we've seen the bond yield kind of come up. So they don't think that the Bank of Canada is going to have enough ammo to continuously and aggressively cut. So we might see a point where the fixed rate and the variable rate
are
more in line, because right now the variable rate is higher than the fixed rate.
And here's the other thing too, is that especially with changes in the American economy and the Canadian economy, there's a lot of prediction that our dollar is going to be hurt with the new presidency. I know that that's not necessarily the case. I know that's not your opinion, but with a couple things that, people's opinions, right? So we need to make sure that our dollar doesn't get too far away. So even if we continue to cut, Canadians are going to be excited. However, long-term in the economic world of things, we can't be too far away from the States. So where they're at, compared to where we're at, we need to stay decently close to what the Fed is doing. Do you even know where they're at right now in terms of rate? They're higher than us. I know that.
The Fed, they were higher than us to begin with, and they only did a 50 basis point cut versus we've done 325s and
no, we did a 50
and 150. Yeah. With 325s and 150.
So what? They're at 4.5 then. We're at 3.75. Does that sound right?
I think they might be at 5. I think, I think they're at 4.5. Yeah.
That sounds right to me. But if let's say we continue decreasing our rate, that's just going to devalue our dollar compared to the States. They're our biggest trading partner. They're our big brother in terms of many, many different things. So I don't know if the next rate decision, which is in December, we're going to see another decrease. I think they'll probably hold, but to expect one more decrease of 0.25 before the spring is probably on the horizon.
Yeah, we'll definitely see. So like I've been having this conversation with some people about our dollar. So our dollar has, people are like, oh, if Trump gets in, our dollar is going to decrease. So our dollar since 2021 has decreased. It was at just over 80 cents. Now we're at 71, 72
It's
cents.
at a record low.
Yeah,
right?
so it's already at a record low. So to be frank, Stephen Guilbeault, our environment minister, wants to put a cap on oil that Alberta produces. And Danielle Smith, the premier there, has come out very vocal and said, we will not listen to this cap. It's not happening. We are reducing our emissions, but oil and natural resources is too important to our economy to try and cap it. And her argument is that if we do export a lot of crude oil to the States, and it's a huge part of Alberta's economy. And they are one of the cleanest miners, or I don't even know how do you say this word. It's not coming to me, but their production of oil is very clean, and their labor laws are a lot stricter. So if they stop producing oil, then other countries like Venezuela, Iran will start producing to make up for that deficit that Canada's not producing. Right. So it will not have an effect globally on emissions reductions. Does that make sense?
Totally.
So she's like, no, that's not happening. That's not doing it. But our dollar is my whole point is our dollar is very sensitive to the price of oil.
Yeah.
So if we are not, producing oil, we're not, being a country has investments and opportunity, our dollar hurts. And I heard Pierre Poilievre say this. He said that $450 billion since Trudeau has gotten in has left Canada and moved to the States in terms of investment.
$450 billion with a B.
With a B. So almost half $1 trillion. So again, we can't blame other countries for our weak dollar. We have to look at ourselves and say, how do we make our economy more productive? How do we not focus on just housing? Even though it's a housing podcast, I think that there needs to be other avenues of investment.
And just even the policies when it comes to businesses and starting up a business, small businesses,
income
laws,
tax. Yeah.
It doesn't make so much sense in Canada compared to if you were to open up a small business in the States. They just have different policies. They make it way easier, more lucrative to shelter some of that profit instead of having to give up.
Well, yeah, I remember when I think Hillary Clinton called out Trump a long time ago saying, you don't pay tax. And he was like, well, that makes me smart because I know how this tax laws work. And he's like, you're never going to change them because all of your big friends won't let you. Like saying that
Hilarious.
She's got rich donors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's just a side note, not to talk about Trump.
Funny.
But let's move on to the next topic.
Okay.
Do you want to read that first one?
I sure will.
Yeah. This one's good. This has been something I've always talked about, and it's kind of been my thesis on Canadian real estate. So I think it will be good to chat a bit more about it.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just pull it up. Sorry. Okay. 85% of mortgages up for renewal.
Oh, no, sorry. The very top one, recent immigration cuts.
What? That was this sounds like such a good topic.
Well, you can read that one too. I don't mind. You can read that one next.
Okay. Sorry, let's back up here, guys. Recent immigration cuts could lower rents, shrink housing supply gap. So the federal government announced it'll be cutting immigration in response to mounting economic pressures, including the cost and availability of housing. This move from the feds would involve lowering the cap on permanent residents and introducing controlled targets for temporary residents. By slowing immigration, the Fed aims to strike a balance between mitigating the economic challenges that have arisen as a result of the steep population growth and remaining a nation that prides itself on a welcoming immigration policy. Overall, Canada will welcome 900,000 less newcomers over the next 2 years and see its population decline by 0.4% by 2026, followed by slow growth beginning in 2027. Rental market to cool. One of the areas to experience the impacts of reduced immigration, Hogue says, will be the rental market, as newcomers, especially temporary residents, rely more heavily on renting than owning. And then closing the gap. In the longer term, the gap between supply and demand could be lessened as a result of fewer immigrant households being formed. We project that nearly 400,000 fewer households, or negative 46%, will be formed over the next 3 years than we had expected in the Great Rebuild.
Yeah, so I can't agree with it more, and I don't think enough people are like looking at this as like, okay, most people who study economics believe, and I believe, and some people don't, but that's for you to decide, is that immigration has masked our recession. Our GDP not only grew, but a big part of growing our GDP has been the influx of people that we put in here. And if you just look at GDP per capita, you'll see that we've been negative for a long time.
Yeah, and let's talk about GDP per capita versus GDP again, because they're two very different things, where immigration is typically good for an economy, right? It typically boosts your economy if you have a healthy immigration system, and that contributes to the GDP. But then if you look at the GDP in Canada per capita, we are one of the bottom when it comes to the G7.
It's been negative for a long, long time. Yeah. I think it's been like 7 quarters of negative growth of GDP and per capita. So the production of each individual has gone down, which is a really good measurement, in my opinion, versus the whole economy, because you're masking the whole economy because you have more people spending more money because they need to rent, they need to buy food, they need to buy clothes.
Right. You bring in more people, naturally everyone's going to spend more money, right?
100%.
More people are going to buy things. More people
per person, are they productive, or are they better off than
more productive than before
quarters? And the answer has been a pretty hard no.
pretty hard no.
So my concern going forward is that you want to cap oil and gas, right? You want to cap natural resources, which is the cornerstone of Canada. Like, that's the reason why you live in a cold economy, is because you have access to so many natural resources.
Is that what Justin Trudeau is also saying, or is this just the premier?
No, so this is Stephen Guilbeault, his
environmental
minister, wants to
cap. Got it.
And they do want to do things like electric cars and stuff like that by 2035, like forcing these. Yeah. You're almost saying we don't want to use our natural resources here anymore because of the environment, which I understand as like a virtue signal idea that, if we stop this, then we're doing our part. I get it, but
someone's going to make up for it.
Exactly, but where there's money to be made, someone's going to drill. Someone's going to have natural.
You'd have to lithium for the electric cars. That's just a whole separate conversation too, if we were to push us to that.
We can get our emissions down with technology, but technology just takes time.
Right. Side note, if they're trying to push everyone to electric cars and electric vehicles by a certain date, I am in the market for a new car, and I just priced out a Tesla X, and my insurance quote came back at $21,000 per year. So guess who's not going to be buying a Tesla?
I don't think you should get an electric car.
I know, I'll be stranded.
You'll forget to charge it. You already get stranded on the highway because you forget to put gas in your car. So.
Tell people that.
You put it on your Instagram story.
I've done that a few times. But $21,000 because of the cost of the battery. So I don't know why it was so much more expensive than a luxury Range Rover, to replace, right? But there's a massive difference in insuring me. And yes, I'm a high risk driver. But that was the quote last night. Isn't that wild? $21,000 for a year.
That's crazy. Oh my God. But to wrap that thought up is that I think that if less people come in, also the Bank of Canada needs to rerun their numbers of the GDP growth that we're going to see.
Oh, 100%.
Because now you're taking out all that population growth. So where's that productivity coming?
Right.
Where's that money coming from now?
Right. And does our economy catch up enough where if you take out that immigration that has been allowing us to not deem we're in the recession, right? It's making up for it. Do we see actually negative GDP, or are we slowly coming out of it where even without that increase or even without the same numbers of immigration, where does that leave us in GDP as a whole?
Yeah, and I don't like Alberta brings in a lot of money for the country. So I don't think
Alberta go.
Yeah, they do. They're a very productive province. So like, you know, having these like standoffs with Danielle Smith rather than like working with her, it's stupid, and I think it's childish, and I think it really needs to get a lot better, because like you as the federal government should have a good relationship with the premiers of all these provinces.
100%.
Like, you guys should be working together, and you're never going to get everything 100%
be publicly
right.
divided. That's the part that irks me, is that premiers and mayors and prime minister, like all of the levels of government in Canada, can be so divided and it's public.
Yeah.
Because it's all about getting the votes and getting people to follow you. And it's a little bit of the political theater that we like to say, where things become so much more public instead of these are the issues at hand. We're divided on our opinions. Are those opinions based on facts or, you know, the future of a certain thing? Or is it your values of wanting to save emissions, knowing that another country is going to make up for it, right? Where is it coming from?
Yeah, it's like, you know, although, you know, I know that maybe like the oil and gas industry is not the best for the environment, but if people still use it and will use it for a while, why not keep that at home where we know it's done clean, the labor laws are legitimate, rather than in another country where
I wonder why. I understand, listen, if there was a way to cut emissions globally, and if, you know, we reduce them, it would actually bring them down globally, then you are doing a good thing in terms of the longevity of Earth itself.
Sure.
Fine.
Yeah.
But if somebody else is going to make it up, how do your values stand when you're trying to protect the world, but you're actually not doing anything other than hurting your own people because somebody else is going to make it up? So you have done absolutely nothing. The emissions are the same. So when it comes to things like that, it's a hard call to make, especially if you really stand behind wanting to make a difference, but that's not the way to make a difference, because it's like somebody else will pop up.
And listen,
and you just have to know that fact.
100%. And there's going to be other people on the other side of this argument arguing that, you know, doesn't matter what we think, like this is and that's okay. Like we're going to have differences of opinions, and that's life. But.
And we, like you and I, like we don't follow economics to that extent. We're realtors. So we're mainly here to educate rather than state our opinion, because I'm sure when it comes to these topics, there's just so many things that aren't at our fingertips to know to be able to comment to that level.
100%. We're not economists, but yeah, just
well, you're a little.
No, I'm not. Yeah,
a little bit.
Maybe one day. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the big thing is that when it comes to the whole point of that was when it comes to real estate, I'm actually a believer that if population declines, if we can get builders going by removing the taxes that Pierre wants to do, hopefully on the federal level and the municipal level, that we can increase supply, decrease demand, and hopefully create more affordable housing where Canadians and people who want to come here and contribute to the economy can buy a home or rent a home at a relatively good price where they can have kids and they can see a hopeful future that, you know, our parents had, that we hope to have as well. So.
Did you see the post where it said baby boomers were and will forever be the richest generation, and no one don't expect it? So our generation, having grown up with the baby boomers, having bought in the housing market where it was, having things shot up, like before everything happened, to expect a similar lifestyle, let's call it, as our parents. Like our grandparents were a part of the war and the great, like there are so many things that our grandparents went through that made their lifestyle or lifespan not as good as the baby boomers. It was like the baby boomers is because everything ended. Like the Great Depression was over. Everyone was so excited. Things were affordable. They were having multiple kids, baby boomers. Yeah. Things were affordable. So I think that will be the anomaly for a long time.
Yeah. But I am hopeful. I honestly
things are still things are getting a little bit better when it comes to affordability for, you know, your typical starting price of, let's say, $800,000 in an area like Georgetown, Halton Hills, Hamilton, Burlington Townhouse. Like that $800,000 purchase price with 20% down in a mortgage is more affordable, let's be real, from last year. The rates have actually, you know, done the trick. Things are becoming more affordable. And supply is still out there. So when it comes to looking at the market as a whole, I think it's a good market right now in terms of you thinking about getting in. Prices are still quite low. Things are, you know, way more affordable than they were a year ago in terms of your monthly payment. Okay.
Yeah, don't overthink it.
I like where the market is right now for a buyer. Do I wish prices were a little bit lower for the first-time buyers that wanted to get in? Yeah, but where we have been and where we are now is a huge change.
And if you like the house and you can afford the house, then you should buy the house. If not, keep renting. Forget about it. Don't even don't try and time this thing, because like no one's ever been able to time it perfectly and probably never will. So just a little food for thought. Yeah. Okay, you want to read that one that you were so eager to read?
I was so eager.
That's our last topic.
Okay. 85% of mortgages are up for renewal in 2025. They face higher interest rates. All right. Renewal risk remains, as the majority of the 1.2 million mortgages up for renewal in 2025 will face higher interest rates than where their term began, finds the CMHC in their fall 2024 residential mortgage industry report. According to CMHC, 85% of those $1.2 million mortgages were contracted when the Bank of Canada rate was at or below 1%. Currently, the rate sits at 3.75, although experts are predicting another 50 basis point cut on December 11th. Really, I just said the exact opposite. Another 50. I don't think that we will go to 2.75 overnight rate if the Fed is at 4.5. That's a massive gap.
Yeah,
unless the Fed decreases as well. Do you know when their next announcement is?
I actually don't off the top of my head, but Tiff Macklin was asked this question: is he scared of the dollar? Like one, it was a report. I think she was from Newfoundland. She had a great accent somewhere out east. And she asked, like, are you just going to let the dollar go to 66 cents, 67 cents? Like, is that, and he just kind of tiptoed around the question.
I think he didn't answer, right?
He didn't answer.
He never gave a direct answer.
So, but I think he has to be scared of inflation reaccelerating due to importing inflation.
We import the costs, right? My dad had a business where at one point the dollar was so good that buying things in the States and then selling them here, like, when it comes to businesses where you're outsourcing a lot of your product, like, let's be real, Canada doesn't have a lot of made in Canada. Like, a lot of businesses import from other countries. So if you're buying in their dollar with our Canadian dollar, you're importing those prices, and then you have to charge more for your resale in Canada. So that's where inflation comes from when our dollar is weak. So he has to realize, even if he decreases to kind of grow our economy a little bit more, because it has been so slow for a while, inflation can pop up pretty quickly due to, increased spending. Interest rate is now 2.75. That is a massive cut from where it was. And importing inflation like that, I don't think he will do it.
And I also think the previous thing we talked about with immigration coming down,
right?
There's a lot of, like, I think immigration numbers falling, it won't happen tomorrow, but over time is a bigger risk to housing than these mortgage renewals, in my opinion.
100%. Like, and here's the thing: the people that are renewing, and I'm not done reading it. Sorry, I'll get back to it. But the people that are renewing are not renewing. Luckily, like, I know a lot of people did, and that's when we saw sellers really struggling. The people that bought in COVID at 1%, renewing 2 years later.
I don't think it's the renewals. I think it was the variable rate holders that really got hit. Sorry, continue.
No, you're totally right. But now renewing at these interest rates, like, let's say you do have a 1.5% mortgage. A lot of people don't, because that was where the variable rate was. There wasn't really fixed products that were 1.5.
It was like 2 and change.
Yes.
Yeah.
So to do a jump, you're going to see a little jump, but it's not going to be massive like the variable holders that started their payment at $3,000 and then it went to $7,000.
Yeah. So I agree.
I don't think it's as scary as like what we've already been through.
You're going to have 5 years of pay down, which it's going to be pretty heavy pay down. It should be pretty heavy because your interest rate was so low.
Yeah.
And hopefully you're anticipating it. And some people probably will be forced to sell. 100% that's going to happen. I just don't think the market's going to get flooded with listings.
No.
Because I feel like that probably would have already happened in 2024.
I think we went through the brunt of it already.
But I do think that things are still unaffordable for a lot of people. So I think the buyers that are getting off the sidelines are more buyers that have high incomes, have help from parents. You know, they're ready to get in, and there's still that cohort of people. Like, even, you know, I go out and talk to people in my age group, and the same thing always comes up. I'd love to buy a house, but I can't. It's unaffordable.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. So
come to Hamilton, and I bet you can.
I know it's. I've sold a lot of people houses in Hamilton, and you know, they love it. But it's not for everyone.
Hamilton is Toronto's little messy sister right now.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Let me get back to the rest of this.
I think you were 50 basis point cut on December 11th.
Okay. Still, the interest rate isn't expected to hit 2% until July 2025 at the earliest, and will likely not be hitting 1% anytime soon. I don't think it will ever again.
If we do, we are in deep trouble.
Yeah, I know. I don't think it ever will.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah, 100%.
Unless something crazy happens where we need to do everything we can to speed up our economy. Something major needs to happen that we are desperate for growth.
Yeah.
Which
I agree.
I don't think we're going to, unless, God forbid, another pandemic. If we ever had another pandemic, I think the world would handle it differently because of
they'd rebel, yeah.
Yeah. It would be a revelation. Not a revelation. What am I thinking of?
Revolution?
Revolution. I'm like, it'll be a revelation. No, it'll be a revolution if another pandemic hit. Nobody would even believe anything. People are sick of it.
Well, people don't believe mainstream media. But
oh my gosh. Okay. Thus, a certain percentage of those mortgages up for renewal in 2025 could experience interest rates anywhere from 1% to 2.25% higher than when they entered into their term.
Yeah. So interesting. We'll see what happens next year. We have
wait, I have one more comment. I'm so sorry. Ahead. So there's also the products where if you're the variable rate where more of your payment goes toward interest rather than principal.
Yeah.
So if you're experiencing the higher rate,
you can work with their bank will
work with you.
Like, the bank's gonna be like, no, I don't want to take more interest.
Yeah.
I'll take them.
Right. So there's also some things in that regard where if you're in a position where you're scared and you're just simply using your iPhone calculator on how much more you're going to owe, it is worth talking to a broker, especially if you're coming to the end of your term. You don't necessarily need to renew, especially since values have come down from likely where you bought. Mm-hmm. Or maybe you bought prior to the COVID peak. But anyways, if the value's still there, you have those 5 years of pay down, you can jump. And sometimes there are better products than what the bank or whatever company you're with is offering you. And
credit unions usually give great offers.
And creative options too. So don't trust the iPhone calculator. Talk to a professional and we can
like people put in more time like looking for a vacuum than they do like shopping. You know what I mean? Like shop around for your mortgage. Like just know that especially with them removing the stress test on renewals, like changing lenders, that's big too.
Yeah.
We've got the 30-year extension under 20%. Like some people are going to jump all over that. I'm not saying it's going to skyrocket the market.
Because you can re-amortize. So if you've had 5 years of pay down already, and let's say you had a 30-year amortization when you bought.
Yeah.
You bought with 5% down. Now you're back at 25. If it's so stressful to have that increase when you're renewing of $3,000 going to $4,000 and it's we're tight,
they'll let you
can re-amortize to 30 years.
We're not saying that's a good thing. Like obviously you want to ultimately pay off your mortgage, but you ultimately don't want to lose your house too.
Yeah.
So people got
to do us if you're struggling because we have the right team in place.
People have to do what they have to do. So, there's some things coming up. Like there's some things that I'm worried about, and there's some things that make the market look decently healthy. And again, it kind of comes back to my thesis of like a lot of bad things, a lot of okay things. Maybe we just trade sideways like the 90s and prices aren't going to
skyrocket. How long did they trade sideways for? Quite a long time, 10 years now. 10 years, things were sideways.
Yeah.
So maybe things just stay here.
Maybe they do, right?
But there's just people, like even with the decrease in immigration, like I just think that the 90s were very different than where we are now. So
yeah, maybe. Only time will tell, and trying to guess what's going to happen sucks, but we'll just give you the facts and everyone makes their own decision. Yeah. I quickly wanted to touch upon how cool I thought that a lot of people decided to vote for the Republicans was because of how much like JD Vance, who was Trump's vice president, went on podcasts, and that you don't have to just rely on headlines.
Yeah.
And I think Canadians should do the same thing, that you can listen to people have real conversations and honest conversations. And I hope that politicians and MPs do go on even smaller Canadian podcasts. Invite out there if anyone wants to come on ours.
Yeah.
And explain their policies.
There's an empty spot right there.
And we'll ask you just honest questions and
just have a conversation.
Yeah,
not setting you up, not tricking you.
Exactly.
Genuinely. Because I'm open too. We're not politicians. We're not economists. We're realtors at the end of the day.
I just want to know what you want to do different and like how you're going to make change and what your policies are. And I hate when I'm watching like CBC and they've got a 5-minute interview and then the politician dances around the answer and you don't really you feel confused. So I thought it was really cool. And I think that's where Kamala went wrong. One part was that she didn't do enough long form podcasts so people could get to know who she was.
Right.
And I think that Trump's son actually pushed him to go on all these podcasts. And I think it was very evident that a lot of Americans spent time, even if you watch a 3-hour podcast, you get to know someone a lot better than you do on a CNN interview or
100%.
something like that. So podcasts are a huge resource.
And usually the person on the podcast doesn't know enough, or like, I don't have a place to disagree with a politician to an extent, and maybe like some things, but let's be real. The public does not know all of the facts, right?
Nope.
So it's, I think it is important. This is more of a real setting than watching CNN or Fox News.
100%. And Trump absolutely crushed that aspect. And I hope Pierre goes on a lot of podcasts, and Trudeau goes on podcasts, and Singh goes on podcasts, and they have open and honest conversations rather than just like snippets from CNN or CBC or something like that, where let's face it, mainstream media is very biased on a certain side.
Do you know who Jordan Peterson is?
Yes.
I was just
Pierre went on his podcast a long time ago.
So I just bought this massively expensive ticket to go sit down with him December 1st.
Amazing.
Isn't that sick?
That's cool. Yeah.
So then I'm gonna be like, hey, I'm here. Can you come on my podcast?
Yeah, and Peterson gets a lot of hate, but like,
no. He is like my idol.
Yeah. And that's okay. Yeah, that's something that you can have and you can believe in. Yeah, that's fine.
People might not like it. I think I think it's real. I think what he says makes fucking makes sense. See, I'm getting hit.
Well, no advertising dollars, but I think it's cool. I hope Pierre goes on Peterson, and I hope Trudeau would consider going on some podcasts that aren't sponsored by CBC and they're just normal everyday podcasts. Yeah. So anyways, guys, hope that information helps. Hopefully there's no divide in your house, and that, the election's over and we'll have another one here in Canada. And hopefully it's not as messy. So we appreciate the support. If you guys can like and subscribe, it helps us get bigger guests on the channel. Hopefully it'll help us get some politicians on before the election. We'd really appreciate that. And if you want to support us on a further level and you want to have a chat about your real estate goals, click the first link down below in the description. It'll take you to our calendar. You can book an absolutely free call. There's no sales tactics or pressure. You just get to know us and see if we are a good fit to help you achieve your goals. So thanks again, and we'll see you guys next week. Take care. Yeah.